Welcome to a very special edition of Community Chat. Today we're turning our attention to town government, where voters will head to the polls on November 15th for a special election to fill an open seat on the Abington Select Board. Joining us is Mike Lavery, who is here to talk about his campaign, the challenges facing the town, and his vision for Abington's future. Mike, welcome to Community Chat.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Let's first start off with getting to know you.
Sure.
For folks who don't know about you, share a little bit about your background. Are you involved with town government currently, and why you're running for the seat?
Sure. So I'm a first-time homeowner in Abington. We moved it about 4 years ago. It's been a great community. I'm active in the town government. I am on the Affordable Housing Committee. I am a town election worker. Some people at home might have seen our exciting soccer games, which I call for Abington Cam. So that's really fun. I enjoyed that a lot. And then just around the town, everyone's been so great. Like, it's such a welcoming community. I am a first-time expecting parent. We're expecting a baby girl. So things like the girls' sports is exciting for me to see them get supported, because my wife thinks we're going to have an athlete, but we're both nerds, so I don't know if that will work out for us. But yeah, it's an exciting place to live. I've lived a lot of places in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and this is the first place that really we wanted to root in, because it was a really great community.
Okay. Well, what motivated you to run for the open select board seat?
Sure. So on the Affordable Housing Committee, Amanda Zompetti was on it with me. Mm-hmm. And when we found out she was moving, she talked to me about the position and what it entails. And then a lot of people in town that I've talked to really encouraged me to do it, because they see someone that's passionate about the town, someone that has put a lot of care and effort and will fight for the town, will fight for them. And like I said, raising a child, I'm excited to set it in a future that I will be happy for her to grow up in.
Okay. What do you like most about Abington, and how does it shape the way you want to serve this community?
Sure. So what I like most about Abington is the community. Like I mentioned, I've been places for a while. I was election workers in other towns. I lived in other tight-knit communities, but it was never like this. The people that have been here their whole life, even them have welcomed me in, even though I was an outsider, a new person, that have helped me in the town. When I was an election worker, for instance, I was put in Precinct 3 to work, and our warden was Ellen Delaney, and every single person that came in, she knew, and she introduced me to them, and everybody knew each other. Everyone is interested in each other's stories and lives. They gave me a couple workers that were high school kids to work the election with me, and some of those same kids I'm seeing play on the soccer field, and that's really, I love seeing, watching them grow up, and the responsibility they took working an election, and also seeing them be able to play on the soccer teams. It's like I said, it's community I haven't seen before, and when I talk about seeing those kids grow up, I hope for the same thing for my kids, when people throughout the town will know who they are, and I'll feel safe that they're, volunteering around town or doing sports stuff, doing school stuff, where I know that people will know them and everyone's watching out for each other.
Well, you're coming into this election at a very interesting time. The town is facing a projected budget deficit for fiscal 27. From your perspective, what are the biggest challenges that lie ahead?
So every department I've gone around and talked to, they've had concerns about the budget. Everyone is trying to cut. I recently talked to Chief Bonney at the police station, and he recently also spoke in front of the select board, and he talked about how understaffed they are, and things about it's costing us more money to be understaffed than it would to be if we hired more staff. We budgeted $140,000 in police overtime. They surpassed that in 2 months. They're using $90K a month right now, and it's nothing that they're doing wrong. We need police on the ground, and there's things like that I just feel like we're not looking at. Massachusetts has a flagger program where you can train people to work traffic details, and they make $19 an hour, whereas opposed to if a police is forced to do overtime, minimum they make $33 an hour, overtime is $50 an hour. So we're saving $52,000 a year just by having a flagger as opposed to having to use overtime. And Chief Bonney, he's concerned about their burnout. They're getting home safely. Last week there was a high-speed chase that went into Brockton, and he had one officer that made the arrest by himself. Like, he didn't have a partner with him at the time because they're so short-staffed. And every department has those issues. The library was telling me how they would love to have a social worker. Same with the senior center. I think there's things in the budget where if we hire a social worker to cut out overtime in other departments, we can save money there. And I do think that just budgeting, our biggest cost everywhere is salaries. So budgeting salaries and finding a way where it's not, people aren't so stretched thin that they can enjoy their lives, and also they can not be spending 60 hours at work, and we're not burdening the town with the expenses of it.
So there has been talk about a potential override to balance the upcoming budget and future budgets. Do you believe an override is the way to go? And under what conditions would you support one?
So personally, I don't agree with permanently raising taxes, which is what would happen during an override. But if the people at the town meeting, like if people vote and they're for it, then I would support that. I don't mind having to pay more tax myself. I just don't want to put that burden on other people. It's a hard time for a lot of people. They have an idea right now that they've passed that they want to do a sort of menu version of the override where they pick and choose and the people vote on specific departments. I like the concept, but I do worry that there are things that will fall through the cracks if we do that. Because there's some things that everyone's going to support, like police, like schools. But there's some things that people won't support, like maybe trash or maybe the roadworks, things like that, where things we use every day, but we don't think about it. And if we don't fund those things, it'll catch up and be a higher cost in the future.
Okay. Well, if not an override, what other solutions or strategies would you like to see explored to be able to close those budget gaps?
Sure. So things I mentioned, like hiring flaggers, for instance, that can take a huge burden off the police force so they can do what they are trained to do, what they want to do, what they got into the force to do. Things like there's programs like that I work on, the affordable housing, that can, when I started on the committee, we were below 7% affordable housing. Now we're above the 10% threshold, so it gives us access to new zoning. So things like we can now be MBTA community, and we can now have additional units on property, but also it gives us more access to things like grants and stuff like that that will bring in more money. And there's also like ideas about trash that I don't think we've explored fully.
Okay.
And I think that could be a huge, between saving on the overtime and saving on trash, I feel like those can be huge helps to correct our budget.
It's interesting, you mentioned the trash situation twice. Last year, there was an initiative put forth to try to shift how the trash was paid for.
Sure.
My brief understanding is that there was an override passed many years ago, and the idea for that override was to be able it wouldn't be an expense that was put onto the residents, but because of the cost of getting rid of trash and tipping fees that you have to deal with that are currently escalating, the thought is that we may need to shift the burden eventually. How do you feel about this, and how do you find it? How do you find a way to be able to balance fiscal responsibility, but yet be fair to the taxpayers?
Sure. So I'm gonna briefly segue and come back. One thing at a select board meeting I was at is we had a property that we owned abutting the golf course, and we had renters that were renting it. At a certain point, we decided, the select board said we didn't want to be landlords anymore, and they kicked those people out, and then they were going to sell it for, it was worth at the time $400,000, but instead they donated to the golf course. First of all, I didn't agree with not getting rent because I would rather have sustainable income than one payment, but the idea of not wanting to be a landlord if it comes down to it, we have to hold the trash company's feet to the fire. I know they're a local company, and I hope they support us, but if they don't want to budge on it at all, we can go and we could buy trash trucks. It's 150,000 to 300,000 for a truck. It's a lot, but we could do the process ourselves for a quarter of what we are paying a company to do it. We would hire more people, more jobs. It would all cost us, but in the long run, it's saving us less than what they want. They want $1.2 to $1.7 million for trash. And I understand it's a burden on them. Tax prices are going up everywhere, but our funding that we're getting federally and from the state isn't going up at the same rate. So we can't, like, if they're not to as low as they can go, then we need to force them to go as low as they can go, because I think they would rather negotiate than lose almost $2 million contract, in my opinion. And if we have to do trash on our own, I think we could do it. Just like I think we could have been a landlord and get $30,000 of rent a year instead of just giving the building away now to sunk cost.
Okay. Well, again, we're talking about the finances in the town and affordability. What about our seniors? What about the residents who are on fixed income?
Yeah.
Are you worried about rising costs and how that's going to affect them? Because how would we ensure it to be affordable, but yet protect those vulnerable residents as well?
Yeah, that is a very important subject I'm passionate about. I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee. At the time, there was also an opening on the Housing Authority, and I found someone who had history working in that, and she joined the board, Michelle Gill. She got written in the last election, and she's done great on affordable housing. All the seniors I talk to have issues with affordability, and it's a huge concern. And things like the new zoning we get, now that we're above the 10% threshold, we can have new housing, new units in yards. But also, in 1995, there was a law put in place in Massachusetts that we cannot cap rent. But in 2026, there's a push to get it on the ballot to revoke that.
Like a rent control.
Yeah, so we can rent control. But there is also no rule that says when new corporations come in that we can't ask them to hire the amount of senior living and affordable living in the complex. And I'm not talking about like mom and pops that have a second property that they want to rent out, or people that have a unit behind their house or an in-law. But these giant corporations come in and jack up the rent in people. We can put in the bylaws of how many units need to be affordable and how many to be senior friendly. And we need to look out for the seniors, because the state's not going to, the federal's not going to.
Let's talk water, because I think water is the key. In two different ways that I want to make sure we address it. First off, water capacity and water quality. Those things are key. Water capacity is key when it comes to economic development, but water quality has been an issue, knowing that you have to deal with PFAS.
Yep.
You need to filter it out, and that there's a mandate, a state and federal mandate as to how clean that water has to be. What are your concerns? What do you think? How should the town address this issue moving forward, knowing that they're going to have to pay an exorbitant cost for filters to be able to filter our water in this town?
So I just talked to a 2-generation family on Plymouth Street, and that was their number one concern. They won't use the water. They drink water out of bottled water. In our household, we drink out of bottled water. We just recently had a new, young, exciting person named Amanda Hunter voted onto the water board. And I just talked to her the other day, and she was telling me that we now have a system that tells us it can predict growth, it can predict need. The only issue with that is when federally we lose fundings for things like the National Weather Service, that affects how that program works. And we got approved to install a new filtration system for the whole town. It hasn't been put in yet, but with this whole system we have currently, we are now ahead of the curve on PFAS when it comes to nationally. It's still not perfect, but we are headed in the right direction, and I'm happy with just the changes I've seen in the last year or two. We saw, it must have been 6 months ago now, that we had a boil notice, and I don't think a lot of people loved how that was handled, but I think we've bounced back, and people took that seriously, so now they're starting to actually put motions in, like the new filtration system, like the new prediction system, that I think are really gonna point us in the right direction.
Let's talk a little bit about improving the water supply.
Yeah.
A lot of folks feel that this is key to attracting and supporting new economic development. Do you agree? And how would you prioritize these investments? Where would we get additional water? Do you want to go with the MWRA? Brockton is tied into a desalination plant that they don't necessarily use, but is available if Abington wants to pay the price. What are your thoughts?
So one of the things on affordable housing that comes up a lot is when we build new housing, like we have a big complex that's going to open up right near the train station, that's going to require more water. And everything we want to do to make living affordable and expand the city, it's going to require more water. And I am interested to look into all the options. I think Brockton is a good option, but everything that we do is going to cost something. So it's going to come down to balancing the budget of what we can do. And we just started a new committee, actually, the financial committee. It's not the finance board, but it's one that's for kind of balancing the budget. And I have
Like an advisory board?
yeah, and they haven't filled all the positions yet, but I'm interested to see when those positions get filled and that committee really gets rolling, what ideas they have. Because financially, I haven't looked into which option is the best. I do know that there are options, but also we have to make sure we keep up with the demand, and that is one issue that people have been concerned about.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about town properties.
Yeah.
Folks have constantly been talking about the north and center school
Yeah.
buildings. What would you like to see happen with those properties? Now, you can't do much right now with the north because it's being used by the DPW, while the DPW fire station project are, underway at this time. What would you like to see done with those two properties?
Sure. So I was at Abington Celebrates this weekend and the Oktoberfest. I saw Cam was doing some wonderful coverage there. I saw some of the kids that actually do the camera work with us, so that was exciting. And one lady came up to me, and I was talking to people about what they're interested in, and she was very mad because she said that the Affordable Housing voted against selling the school properties to a developer. And I informed her that, like, I'm on that board. That's never come up. So I do think there's some disinformation about the situation right now. We have put out feelers to get bids. Unfortunately, there's been no bids. Personally, I think the reason is there's been a lot of prerequisites that developers need to fill, and we need to look at those more closely to see if that's the issue. But also, we have this property, and if we want to, we could sell it, which is what they want to do with the developer. But if we wanted to, reinvest and make it sources of sustainable income to the town, that could extend our, fixing our budget problems. When I was talking about the water, for instance, that family that only drinks out of bottled water, I talked to someone else about, for instance, a municipal grocer that, we could take one of those schools and put a little municipal grocery store in there. They don't pay taxes, and that's what they get out of it. And in return, they get to give us lower groceries. And then they don't take a profit. Anything that's profit goes back into the town. But we have all these farms around. People are worried about costs of everything. So, if we took half of one of those schools, or if we took the whole school and made it retail area, we put a little municipal grocery in there, more jobs for more people getting cheaper groceries, and maybe that will also force local grocery places around to lower their prices for people. And I think that might be an interesting thing to look at, if not developing housing. Or even when I lived in Weymouth at the Air Force Base, they had this cute little community that were all these cottages, and then there was a greenery in the middle. I think that would be a cool idea for senior housing or first-time homeowners, that we lease out to them, so they're paying us, we're getting more income, and then it's cheaper, that they can be a first-time home for homeowners, or it could be a retirement home for couples. And we can let them know it can be in there that we have first refusal when they want to move, that they can, if we want to buy it back, we can buy it back and then sell it again or rent it out again, lease it out again. I just feel like those are ways of sustainable income that's smarter than just trying to get these one-time hits. Like, I used to be a baseball writer. I mentioned that to you. People are looking for a home run to fix this budget, and it's not going to be a home run hitter. Home run hitters strike out a lot too. We need guys that get on base. We need just singles. We need to pick away at these little things like flaggers, like getting social workers, municipal groceries, just little things that are going to chip away. It's going to take some big things, but also just around the edges, there's a lot of waste that we could be more responsible about.
I like the analogy about home run hitters, but what should the batting average be of that particular individual? Do you want somebody who hits high, 280, 290, 300, or someone who's
I would rather have
slugger?
I would rather have somebody that's getting on base more and making small advances than waiting for one person to come and hit a home run. I know that's just an analogy, and it's not for everybody. Not everyone's a baseball fan, but I don't think the solution is going to be someone comes in with an axe and just chops down one thing and we're fixed. It's going to in the same baseball analogy, we need to keep something that keeps momentum going. And a home run is great, but getting guys on base, it puts a lot of pressure on keeping things going. So
okay, let's talk veterans.
Sure.
Abington is a proud veterans community. What are some of your priorities when it comes to supporting the efforts of our veterans here in town?
So I talked to veterans just on Sunday at the event. There was a couple of different tables there, and I asked them what their biggest needs were. They did say they were very strongly supported by Abington, which is a great thing for the town. Our veterans are very important, and it's great that we support them. One minor need that they need is full-time van driver. Same thing that the senior center told me that they need. They just need someone that can drive people to appointments and stuff like that. But he said in an ideal world, he would love more staff, but he said they can make it work with what they have. I think at bare minimum, we can get them drivers. We can find ways even for people to volunteer. When I first started working as a election worker, I was desperate to find ways to volunteer for the town. Not until I talked to Ellen did she tell me about the opening on the housing committee, for instance. Like, I think there's people also that are willing to help, and like a mutual aid network that I think would be really important. But also, the veterans also tie into housing, because one big thing, he didn't say this to me specifically, but just from around the state, I know that veteran housing has been a huge issue. I have a friend who lives in Framingham who works at the VA around there. And when all these Doge cuts started happening, I asked him how he was affected. And he said, we were assured it's not going to affect us at all. Last month he got an email that said they're going to have to start cutting workers and they're going to start losing funding for things. So we need to find ways that we can build mutual aid and help the veterans and the seniors alike.
So no, my next question is going to be geared towards talking a little bit about town government.
Sure.
Do you think Abington should consider changing its form of government or stick with the current system? Now, within the past couple of years, there was a charter review committee that formed and looked at things like this, but there was a recent news item about a community here in the Commonwealth that has a town meeting form of government, and they have a town manager and they have a select board, but they're feeling that finding enough people to come and volunteer, because Abington currently has a lot of openings on committees. Do you think we should stick with the current form of government? And this is just basically your opinion, or should it consider a change?
So I know what you mean about getting people to volunteer on committees. One thing I have done really good in the people that are in my circle is community organizer, finding people like I pointed Michelle in the direction of the senior housing. I pointed Amanda in the direction of water to help fill those boards. But I do think that the way it is now, I feel like the people have more of the power, and I think that's how it should be. Right now the select board, they're more enforcing the rules that the town agrees upon at town meetings, at elections, whereas opposed to, if we did a city council, for instance, it would be more the council is making the laws, making the rules. And there is a form of the people's voice when it's the representative that they vote in makes a decision, but I like the idea of the people being able to make the choices, firsthand. But I think no matter what, the people in Abington are resilient, will make either work, and I think either would be exciting, but I do like the way it is.
Okay. Looking ahead, if you are successful
Yep.
on November 15th, what would you say would be your top 3 priorities would be if elected?
Sure. So I think all 3 are tied in a way to affordability and the budget. Things like, meeting with Chief Bonnie and figuring out the best way to cut down on overtime to make it so the police can get their lives back, and also that we can save money on the budget. I think things like affordable housing, we're making good progress on. Like I said, we've jumped over the 10% since I've been on the board. And then things like cost of living, like maybe municipal grocer. That idea is still one I'm really early on looking into. So that might not be feasible. But the other things are very feasible ways to cut down on the budget. And trash is tied into that, water's tied into that. Everything basically comes down to the bottom dollar. And I think that would be my biggest priority. I think the town does a great job in community building. Yesterday at the soccer game was the biggest crowd I've seen there. I think it was like 50 people, which isn't a lot, but for high school soccer, like seeing that many people there, the whole boys team came, was cheering, like things like that in the community is great. Oktoberfest, it was really warm, but still a lot of people showed up. I mean, it was 90 degrees in October, which is crazy, and people still came out. There was probably 30 booths there. You guys were there. So I do think the biggest thing is going to be the budget, because that's going to help the schools. That's going to help the police. That's going to help the fire. That's going to help the library, the senior center. So that's where I would put my focus.
Okay. I think I asked you earlier in regards to what you liked about the town, but I don't think I gave you enough kind of leeway. Sure. You kind of said you liked the people, you liked the community itself. What about, though? I mean, is there something, whether it's certain places to eat, whether it's attending, what do you really, really like about Abington?
Well, a good and a bad thing is that I live 2 doors down from Miragaza, so I can smell the garlic bread and the Italian food all the time. When the steak is sizzling, like it's calling for me. I don't know if I really should go out and endorse any specific businesses, but I love just being involved in the community and going to the events, like the sporting events, like the concerts, the summer concerts. That's really exciting. And it is things like that that I think when we vote on a menu version of the budget, like I'm worried about things like the town concert. That could be one of the first things to get cut, because not a lot of people use it. But the last concert of this year, I think they said there was 2,000 people there. That's like 10% of our town, more than 10% of our town. So I don't know. I don't want to say the community, because that's what I said the first time, but I do think it is the community, but things tied to the community where people come out. I'm a small business owner. I get a lot of support from my business from town people. I go to places like the dog park, and I talk to a lot of people, and they're just excited about things about town. They're excited to talk about things about town. People also like to complain about things about town, but I think both sides are very helpful and useful for me. I have a journalistic background, so I like to pick people's brains and find out what's important to them, and the town is very forthcoming with that information, so it makes being on the select board easier, in my opinion, because people are willing to tell you what they want, people are willing to tell you what they're passionate about, what they're interested in, ideas they have, concerns they have, and I really appreciate that about the town.
I will ask, this is a patented question that I ask candidates,
Sure.
and it's almost like it's an open-ended question.
Yeah.
Is there a topic we haven't touched upon that you'd like to take a moment or two to talk about? Or maybe there's something that we talked about earlier on, but maybe you just might want to, maybe reemphasize or maybe kind of expand upon.
Sure. So the first thing I should say is people, I love that people come out and support the town, and people should come and support CAM, and things like the soccer games. People come out and call sports. It's not hard to get into, and it's not just CAM. I say that because I volunteer with CAM, but there's committees all around the town that I love seeing that people are stepping up for these positions. And there are people that you see, like Bruce Hughes, like Ellen Delaney, that have to have their hands in every single committee. That it would be great if people have an expertise, like Michelle and Amanda. They worked in senior housing, they worked in water, that they found a place on those boards that they can help. But overall, like there's no specific topic that we didn't touch on. I'm passionate about the town, and I think anyone that knows me from the town, if you go to the town hall and ask about me, they'll tell you that I'm a dedicated servant and I love to help people. My dad was a townie. We grew up in Norwell. He bought a house 5 houses down from where he grew up. He worked for the town for 30 years. You know, I don't really leave jobs. The reason I left my last job was because it closed because of COVID. And then I started my own business. I'm very dedicated. I love to stay committed. And I'm not going to like step away from the position as long as people will have me. And I know when I talk to people about Amanda stepping away, people were really worried that there might be another, you know, if they don't get someone serious in the role, they're going to have another runoff because they cost money. We pay for the workers, we pay for the police, we pay for all that stuff. So I just want people to know that I am dedicated to the position, and as long as they're willing to have me, I love helping this town and being a part of this town.
Finally,
Yeah.
as we get ready to wrap up here, what's your message to voters as they are considering who to vote for
Sure.
at the polls on November 15th?
I mean, my opponent she seems great. She seems to love her family. She loves the town. I would love if you vote for me. If you don't, that's okay. But I just urge people to go out and vote. As an election worker, that is very important to me. Whether I get your vote or not, that you're going out there November 15th and voting, because that's how people can make a difference in this town. I mean, when they're not volunteering, when they're not doing things in the community, getting out and voting is very important. Not just this election, every election. I think the last election, we had one of the positions, there was only one position on the ballot, all the rest were uncontested. That came down to 7 votes. So, you know, I would love to serve the community more, and I would love people to vote for me. But being out in the polls is important enough for me.
Okay. If folks want to find out more about your campaign, I don't know if you're a social media guy, if you have a website, do you have any of that information?
So I do have a Facebook page. It is Lavery for Abington, and I have an email, laveryforabington@gmail.com. I would love to hear from people and talk to people and pick their brains, find out what they're passionate about, what they're interested in, because I do like to find ways that we can make that passion thrive in Abington, and people can reach out about their ideas, their concerns, or even things we've talked about. If I'm way off base and they're knowledgeable on the subject, I would love to hear about it, because, you know, no one on the board is an expert in every subject. So when people have expertise, I think it's great for them to step up and make their voices heard.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and wish you the best of luck on November 15th. Our thanks to Mike Lavery, who is a candidate for Abington Select Board for the special election on November 15th, for joining us here in studio. If you want more information about the upcoming election, this is whether you are registered, when, where, and how to vote, the candidates in this race, be sure to check with the town clerk's office, or you can also visit the Town of Abington's official website. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.